Scientology claims it can save the world and believes it's the only thing that can. That belief justifies everything they do.
We are the only chance for humanity.
Scientology has a new headquarters in Berlin. After a period of extensive renovation, the official opening took place on January 13th, 2007.
You don't have to bother knocking. This door is open, and you are welcome.
In 1997, Scientology was placed under surveillance by the German Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, which believes the organization's goals may be irreconcilable with basic human rights. Sabine Weber is one of the most powerful Scientologists in the country. She's president of the Church of Scientology in Berlin and its spokeswoman for Germany. Our cameras were not the only ones rolling for the interview. Weber brought in her own as well. A trusted Berlin church member also taped the interview.
Believe me, there's nothing I haven't seen in terms of unfriendly media coverage. Unfortunately, some reports have been manipulated, and we had to do something about it. On the one hand, we wish to be open. On the other hand, I need to protect myself.
We were told by investigators that Sabine Weber is a high-ranking member of Scientology's Office of Special Affairs, or OSA. The German government believes it may be the biggest privately organized secret service in the world. The German branch of the OSA is known innocuously as the Press and Legal Office. It collects photos, videos, and data on Scientology critics and journalists, as well as members who have dropped out. Agent Johannes Schmalzel says that Scientology uses the data to put pressure on these people.
The OSA is just the tip of the iceberg. They used to call people who criticize the organization repressive persons and go after them. They tried to litigate people into bankruptcy. We believe the OSA remains a very dangerous entity.
Reading Scientology publications and speaking with Scientology dropouts yields two very different impressions of the organization. We requested permission to speak on camera with Scientology employees at the Berlin headquarters and were refused. After weeks of negotiation, we received permission to film at a Scientology stand on the street and were ourselves videotaped. Passers-by are not told about the connection between Dianetics and Scientology at first. Dianetics is the name of the philosophy behind Scientology. The counselors work with something called an e-meter, a kind of lie detector. The Scientologist explains to his subject that she does not have to answer any questions, and then he lets her know that he's from the Church of Scientology. The young woman is shocked at first, then decides to take off the sensors and leave. She doesn't want to have anything to do with Scientology. The Scientologist accepts the response. On the stand are writings by L. Ron Hubbard, science fiction author and founder of Scientology. Hubbard died in 1986. Since then, the organization has been led by David Miscavige, who was only 26 years old when he took over, but had been a Scientologist for many years. Scientologists say they're on a bridge to total freedom. They call the spirit a thetan and say it is the real human, not the mind or body. To free the thetan, you have to loosen your chains to past traumas, or engrams. Werner Hubeni and his wife wanted to learn more about themselves to feel greater freedom in their lives. They dropped out of Scientology 12 years ago.
I say the higher-ups in Scientology don't have the interests of the individual at heart. I joined up and I had my own interests. I wanted to understand something better. That was my goal. And I always thought they would support that. They did an analysis right at the start, and it was a perfect picture of my spiritual and emotional state at the time.
Werner Hubeni climbed relatively high up the ladder in the Scientology system, up to the status of clear. That meant he should have been freed of all painful memories. The process cost him about €250,000.
Eventually, you realize you're getting deeper into what they want. So I grew critical, and I had to go.
His daughter, Yvonne Koenig, has dropped out as well. Like her father, she was initially fascinated by Hubbard's writings. She even signed on for 5 years as a full-time staff member.
A mother with a young child at home, like me, is expected to show up at noon. There's a brief greeting, everyone gets together in a room, and it's open-ended, even if it goes until 10 in the evening. 10 is usually the close of business. That's when they want you to start stuffing envelopes, sending out magazines and so on. So you end up staying there till 3 in the morning.
Every week, the workers have to show their figures, on new members, for instance. The goal is expansion. L. Ron Hubbard wrote about the importance of making more money, and that's still how his church is run. According to German government agents, Scientology is big business, and it tries to influence other businesses as well, they say.
How often do you meet incompetence in your daily labor? Make the L. Ron Hubbard guidelines your own guidelines.
We travel to Hamburg to talk with former employees of a company on the outskirts of town. They say the company was infiltrated by Scientologists. They tell us their relationship with their boss was destroyed. Their former boss wanted them to take a communications seminar, supposedly to improve the atmosphere at work. They had to fill out questionnaires to prepare for the seminar.
There were 200 questions on the questionnaire, some of which were very personal, about religion, children, money, and politics. When I filled it out, I was wondering how they could ask things like that. But I didn't want to get in trouble for not filling it out, so I just randomly checked the boxes.
2/3 of the questions came from the Scientology personality test. Government investigators warn that the test is meant to unsettle and shock people with the goal of driving them into Scientology's arms.
There were some very intimate questions, personal questions. For instance, do you sometimes feel as if you're dreaming? Does life seem worth living? Do you have many friends? Do you have few friends? Do you sometimes toy with the idea of suicide?
Fabian Fischer has lost his job. He and his former co-workers found out that the man who has been organizing these seminars for 6 years, the man who collected their questionnaires, is a card-carrying Scientologist.
Before all this happened, I never really thought much about Scientology. I didn't know what it was. Afterward, I looked into it and realized that I have to see it as an organization that's dangerous to me. I don't want them to have any information on me at all.
Where did the questionnaires go? And why weren't the employees told from the start that Scientology was behind the communication seminar? The company holding the seminars is called Modernist Management and Training. There's a sign outside the building, but we can't find an office